What is it that you enjoyed about therapy? And for leaders, how can you easily give them a differentiation between whether they would need therapy or coaching?
So it's the question, I think it's even more important for the times that we're in. Because the world as we know it, and again, everybody says COVID, but we can't help not saying it because it's been such a radical rupture. It's been, Whitney Johnson talks about disruptive theory, and I love her theory, I love her thinking, and I think it's the right language for this moment in time where it's been so dramatic worldwide, and now there are new twists. Now it's the variant twist. Now it's again COVID twist of more infections climbing back up despite the vaccine. And so I do think, though it's not about the world of therapy, but I do think what this COVID time has unleashed is unexpected irrational fears. Like no matter what we hear about the so-called science, we don't know if we should believe it, we should doubt it. I mean, I'm not willing to criticize people who distrust the vaccine. I'm willing to say, I understand. Why should they trust it? I know that, there's certain groups, particularly in America, who have no reason to trust healthcare authority. There's a segment of people, especially if they're Black, who have terrible history about authority figures being very dangerous. And I don't want to go into that because it's such a painful story. And so if they distrust so-called authority figures, it's in the DNA that they would doubt that. However, right now, we all have to come together to hear each other's concerns. We need some of those. So I do think therapy world has some very powerful pieces of wisdom that we could import, like computer words, we could import that content into our heads, our heart, and our gut. And what is that? Understanding. We have to look to understand, absolutely. And we have to create the conditions of trust, which is more, I think, we've learned that from the therapy world. There was a famous psychologist by the name of Carl Rogers. It's called Rogerian thinking. And he was very Rogerian, was very affirming, very understanding, very welcoming. Well, we could do with that in everything that we do. I think right now is to invite that. About 10 years ago, one of our wonderful thinkers, David Rock, came up with a model called SCARF, which stands for the challenges that trigger amygdala hijack, which was threats to status, threats to certainty, threats to achievement, threats to relationships, and threats to fairness, trigger this kind of feeling of panic, which we call amygdala hijack. Well, we're living in that now, where people's job could be at risk, their relationships with people, somebody moves away. It's terrible. Your whole support system is going. So I think that now these therapy skills are actually needed without it being therapy. Like, I once did a group, at the end of it, particularly the men said, I have so much love for you, I'm feeling gay. And I thought, I said to them, you need to know that's a little bit that is actually, you're joking, but that's not a joke anymore. They didn't have the words. And I said, so let's look for other words. Well, I feel close to you. I said, okay, let's just breathe. And is that scary? Because now what has happened is that the world of COVID has made it okay to talk about loneliness because we've been in so much isolation. And those people that really realize they feel not as, in isolation, you feel less smart and your mood gets altered. Isn't that interesting? And what's also interesting, there's been an epidemic of, a drug kind of epidemic. Well, when people are feeling lonely, sometimes they get, drinking has increased or drug use has increased. And we need to understand that these conditions are putting us at risk. So we need to even be thinking bigger picture, what can we do to help people reconnect? I mean, if there's anything, longevity research has really said we live longer with relationships, right? COVID has cut across everything. So how to help, there's marvelous books that have just come out recently on Reconnect or working together, or that have really shown us we need to actually do that. So even now on Zoom, knowing how to be more contactful, knowing how to be more validated. So like now, if we were just talking, I would pause and I'd say, okay, I throw the ball to you, Shiyen, and say, okay, I'd like you to talk for 5 minutes and tell me what's going well, what's not. I would come up with ways of engaging. And in a way, you think that's obvious. But in the world of work where we've been so bottom line, it's not always been permissible. And now it's absolutely needed. Now, as we return to work, we realize we need to make time to really reconnect in a way that work is worth it. Because here's the thing that nobody has seen before. A lot of people are now questioning, should I even return to work? Is it worth it? Is it worth what it does to my family to work this hard and get less family time? Because all of a sudden people realize, things could happen. I could get the illness,
Right.
God forbid, I could, and now they know. So our value system has been affected. And some of this is hard to talk about. We used to distinguish between the world of strategic thinking and relational thinking. We used to think that they were two different things. Now we think that they are intertwined, and we need to know how to be sensitive to use both. If you're not having a strategy, well, you'll be driving into a wall sooner or later. If you don't have relationships, the work isn't worth it.